Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let's have a philosophical discussion about a tragedy, actually. So, recently Manchester in Britain was bombed. 22 people died. It was at an Ariana Grande concert. Um, Britain, Britain is probably one of my favorite countries. I have no idea why. It just is. It's something about it that I love. So, it's a place I would consider somewhat close to my heart in this way. That being said, I don't see anybody getting injured, hurt, or anything else. Um, if we're looking at it with a microscope, and we're just kind of looking at the people who were injured, the people who died, who were hurt, um, those people are going to carry those wounds with them for the rest of their lives. And not just that, even the society itself is going to take a certain perspective, particularly from the people who they perceive did it. Meaning, there's going to be a stigma associated with whoever the culprit is. Now, I was looking at further reports. They were saying that for the most part, they caught a few people, but there's still people who are outstanding, particularly the bomb maker, the person who actually created the device. They said the device was too complicated for the person who set the device off or who dropped the device off. Now, let's acknowledge tragedy. Acknowledge, full on acknowledge. This is a tragedy. People died. People were hurt. The country was shocked. Widen the microscope, though. Like, widen your lens a little bit. And as you're widening the lens, ask the question of, well, is there a reason that anybody would do this? Now, sometimes when people have philosophical discussions about tragedies, they get pilloried with, you're taking pleasure in these people's death and you're justifying it. That's not it. It's just looking at it like an adult and saying, okay, what would be the reason for someone to do this? Because understand, I don't look at these things as being individual. I look at these things as systems. Um, like if something is going wrong, I look at it as, well, is there a flaw in the system that's causing that particular thing to be wrong? I'm a software engineer. I look at these things as systems. Now, yes, you could say people have a certain amount of agency, but people are still systems. People are still functioning within a system with its own rule set and models and everything else, and things that compels behavior or pushes behavior or incentivizes behavior. Those things are still part of the model, particularly when you get into real reality. Like the way our capitalist model rubs up against reality, the world around us. In this very particular case, what I'm getting at is somewhat of a real reality, if that makes sense. When you ask that question, why would anybody want to do this? And let's say it's not just some lone lunatic. Let's say the person wasn't nuts. Let's say the person had reasons. Let's pretend for the moment that that guy is not a cartoon, that the guy is actually a real person with people who love him somewhere, and who, for whatever reason, made the decision that he wanted to set a bomb down and hurt a lot of other people. The moment that you stop looking at that person as a cartoon, you're faced with a point or a particular reality of, okay, why would they do it? Isn't that the pertinent question? Like, when that question, because ultimately that bomb is not going to stop anybody from doing anything. Britain is going to be up and running within a few hours, maybe even the next day. It's a statement. Yes, it's a tragic and monstrous statement, but it's a statement of sorts. And again, I'm not doing this blame thing. I'm just making this very particular point of actions aren't necessarily random. If a person did that, that person did that for a reason. Now, widen your scope further. Is Britain taking part in anything that may aggravate certain factions or certain aspects of the world? Yes. Is the West taking part in things that may aggravate certain parts of the world? Again, yes. Britain, right now, is helping Saudi Arabia murder Yemenis. Right now, as we speak, weapons and information. The United States is helping Saudis murder Yemenis. Now, also, understand, Saudi Arabia is one of the main exporters of terrorism in that particular region of the world, which means Britain is assisting Saudi Arabia in exporting terrorism throughout the world. I don't think it's a leap to say that if you're assisting somebody in doing something, then you're assisting them in doing something. If I'm giving you materials and weapons, and I know what you're doing with these things, then yes, I'm culpable for giving you those materials and those weapons. The United States is doing the same thing. The recent bomb strike, the United States comes out and says, "Oh yeah, we actually did strike that hospital in Mosul. We did kill those 100 and something people. I think it was 144 people." Mulligan. Nobody's going to prison. Nobody's going to jail. Nobody's going to be held for charge. 100 and some people were murdered, snuffed out, gone, no longer exists. Now, just because those people don't exist, do you believe that their loved ones, mothers, sisters, cousins, teachers, fathers, do you believe that all the people who are left behind are, for the most part, going to have any decent feelings about the United States? Do you believe that those people, many of those people innocent, are going to think this bomb strike that killed all of these people are going to be perfectly okay? And what do you think the fallout is going to be in regards to ill will? Meaning, will there be a percentage of the people who are affected by this murdering of 100 some people that take up arms, that decide for action, that strap themselves with a bomb, or that go somewhere with a bomb, with the idea of setting a statement to hurt other people? I'm not saying one justifies the other. I'm trying to make this point of a moral quagmire, where you get into this thing of, yes, the guy put off a bomb strike, but are we saying that Britain is innocent? Meaning, if these were two sides within a war, and one side struck the other side, can we be mad that the other side strikes the other side? Do you see what I mean? I'm getting to this point of this moral quagmire, where one side does something, the other side does something else. Now, terrorism is relative. Terrorism is relative. It's pejorative. So to say we're using our flying killer robots to murder civilians, and I'm saying you're murdering civilians because 90% of the people who we murdered were civilians. So you might as well say civilians. At that point, you can't say you're fighting terrorism because you are murdering civilians, the majority of which of the people you killed. What I'm getting at is if you're flying in that country with flying killer robots and you're murdering civilians, that's terrorism. By definition, by our own definition, that's terrorism. If you're going to invade a country and kill 1 million of those people, a country that did nothing to us, was not a threat to us, was not a threat to our interests, if you're going to murder 1 million of them, nobody goes to prison, nobody gets in any sort of trouble. George Bush is out here finger painting right now. He's finger painting donkeys and animals and stuff. He's on talk shows. Nobody went to prison. Nobody even got in trouble. He murdered people, 1 million people. And not just 1 million people murdered. We're not even talking about the people who went streaming into other areas of the country. Obama right now, or Obama was, supporting terrorism in Syria, literally giving money to terrorists to undermine a particular government. I'm not saying Bashar al-Assad is an angel. I'm saying we shouldn't be giving money to goddamn terrorists to undermine the government. That's what I'm saying. Where are the angels? Where are the angels? Is Britain part of the angels? Or is Britain doing things to antagonize people that is coming back home to hit them at home? I mean, look, can we be shocked by the level of ire in those countries? The United States invaded one country, murdered 1 million people. The country did nothing to us. We expanded that war into Afghanistan, expanding that into 8 other countries. This has nothing to do with the shadow wars we're fighting in Africa. And I'm slightly conflating the United States and Britain in this because these two countries are that quote unquote special relationship. These countries work in tandem with one another. When George Bush wanted to have an illegal war, guess who he called? That sniveling coward, Tony Blair. And you know what that sniveling coward said? I got your back, Bush. Because for whatever reason, the United States always needs a, I don't want to call them a lapdog. I like Britain. I'm just saying, if you're doing things, when it's perfectly foreseeable that there are going to be consequences for the things that you're doing, you can't be shocked at those consequences. That's all I'm saying. It takes an adult conversation. And look, I understand that at an individual level, there's no way to solve that problem. You can't solve that problem at the level of the individual. Meaning, the guy who was adversely affected by those flying killer robots, the guy who was adversely affected by the weapons that Britain was selling to Saudi Arabia. The guy that was adversely affected from people who were streaming out into other countries who were made refugees based on the United States and Britain's behavior. Well, that guy has also suffered. That guy has taken the calamity of what these governments were doing. That guy decided to strike back. In no way am I saying that guy's right. I'm not even saying the guy is justified in his action. I'm making this point that whether he's justified or not is rather besides the point. The action is foreseeable. That's what I'm getting at. I'm saying it takes somewhat of an adult conversation to say, hey, if we're doing things that's causing flack around the world, that flack is going to come back to us. We can't be all that shocked and chagrined when it hits us at home. And we can't take this position of we're super angry that you're doing this, even though we're doing the exact same thing abroad on a scale 10, 20 times more. What do you think people feel when they get hit with a flying killer robot? What do you think the parents of a kid feels when they see that kid get murdered by the United States? Nobody's held accountable. That person is labeled a terrorist just by definition. By our own rule set, that person is labeled a terrorist just because he's 16 or older. Where's the justice for them? There's nobody, creating little Facebook icons with these particular people who are being murdered by the United States and by the actions of Britain. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. I'm saying there needs to be a certain level of context when you're looking at this stuff. I'm not, and again, I keep having to make this point of, no, I'm not justifying the action. I'm making this point that the action is foreseeable, whether you want to justify it or not. Can you make an argument that, look, these guys are at war of sorts. The United States and Britain are essentially doing things that are antagonizing other parts of the world, and their actions are getting people murdered. Can you make an argument that this is just striking back? Yes, you can make that argument. You can make that argument. And look, I know that's a gross argument to make, but yes, you have to be honest. That argument does have some legitimacy to it. If this was any other context, let's say it was a war, two sides are going at it. Is one side going to say, hey, that's off bounds because I don't particularly like the way you do it? Or is one side going to say, you're not a military at this point, you're a terrorist. And so anytime you strike back at me, by default, that's a bad thing. Like, come on, these rule sets are weird and ridiculous, and these rule sets are meant just purely to serve the interests of the people who are making those rule sets. Meaning, the United States makes a rule set that says, yes, even though we're taking military actions, the people we're taking military actions against aren't military, they're terrorists. Well, that's peculiar. Anytime somebody strikes back from those particular countries, no, they don't necessarily have flying killer robots. They strike back with the things that they have. That's not a military strike back. That's a terrorist strike back. It's pejorative. It's used to delegitimize the point of the people who are making those things. It's a moral quagmire. And honestly, the only way out is peace. The only way out is peace. That sounds extremely hippie and everything else. But Martin Luther King had a point. He had a point. There's no way you can kill your way out of a situation. Ultimately, what you're going to end up doing is creating more monsters. We're creating the monsters that we're trying to kill. Literally. That's what's taking place. When Obama was in office, he didn't quite understand why the kill list was getting longer. Despite all of our best efforts, this kill list continues to get longer. Well, yeah, because you're murdering 90%. Well, you're murdering civilians by the thousands. Why don't you think the kill list is going to get long if you're murdering civilians? You don't think those people have a human right to resist in that case? By whatever means they have at their disposal to resist? Yeah. Yeah, that's a real reality. That's a real reality. Survival is a real reality. Meaning, if you're doing something to somebody, you're going to get flack back. You can't cry about it once you get it back. And again, I'm not justifying it or anything else. I'm saying it's absolutely foreseeable that if you're putting something out in the world, that something can potentially come back to hit you in the ass. Britain just got hit in the ass. Yeah, and it kills me to say it, but it's true. It's true. Ultimately, we do things that adversely affect other people, that kill other people, that create refugees. We do very bad things in the world. And we're always stunned when those bad things come back home to hit us and blow open that illusion, that bubble of sorts that these people exist in. Um, Peace is the only path. Peace is the only path. They always ask, like, what's the lefty prescription for this? Like, as a lefty, what are you supposed to do? Leave. You leave. You get the fuck out of Dodge. You acknowledge that nothing that you do over there is going to do any good, and anything that you do for the most part is going to bite you in the ass. And that is literally what is taking place. We go into Afghanistan and assist Afghanistan with the Russians. Okay, that group becomes Al Qaeda. The weapons that we gave them essentially are used to kill American troops. Fair enough. We go in for Saddam Hussein when he goes into Kuwait. Again, completely not. I think it was appreciated in one sense, but the United States went back. And the moment that the United States went back, we became essentially dictators. I mean, we essentially had a military occupation of a country that did nothing to us. The thing with Iran, overthrowing their particular government for the likes of BP oil. Well, you end up with, what's the guy name? A religious cleric, as being the leader of that particular country. It's one thing after the next. All of these things come back to bite us in the ass. Go home. Go home. Stop looking for foreign wars. Stop looking for things to conquer and conquest. If you're going to be playing in a political game of world domination, world conquest, then yeah, you're going to take flack every so often. You're going to get hit by things. You can't complain when you get hit by those things. Now, a lot of America is blissfully unaware of the actions that we take abroad. Well, those people who are at the receiving end of those actions are not unaware of those things. We just tend to be. So, leave. Stop screwing with people. Stop putting militaries in other countries. Deal with your own stuff. And look, this is a problem associated with it, of course. And it's not the problem that you think. It's not a security issue. It's a financial issue. We sell a huge amount of weapons. Our military contracts employs thousands of people. I would even make the case probably millions. The moment that we de-escalate that military budget, those people lose their jobs. Does Congress have an impetus to keep the military budget the way it is in order to keep those people employed? Yes. If Congress guts the military budget and those people lose their jobs, is somebody going to get punished politically? Yes, the other party is going to make hay of it. So part of this is war is profitable. War is a racket. Butler was right. Part of this is also you end up in this weird quagmire where one side does something, the other side does something. For the most part, they start to justify one another. Meaning any action that I take against you is justified by your previous actions and vice versa. It's a Chinese finger trap. Go home. Peace is the only option. Peace is the only option. That is the only option that you stop creating those monsters. That's the only option. That is the hardest option, if I'm being honest. It's seen as weakness. It's not weakness. It's actually just good damn sense to say, all right, nothing that we're doing is doing well here. And look, this boils down to this one other point, and I'm going to leave it at this. It depends on what your objectives are. Like, if your objectives are peace, then yeah, you go home. If your objectives aren't peace, then yeah, you stay where you are. I would make the case your objectives aren't peace. You don't fund terrorists to undermine a particular government if your objectives are peace. You just don't. You don't take particular actions around the globe if your objectives are peace. You don't attack Libya and destroy that country if your objectives are peace. You don't destroy Yemen, or at the very least, you don't help Saudi Arabia to murder Yemenis if your objectives are peace. The United States' objectives have nothing to do with peace. It has to do with world conquest, or at the very least, world influence. There's a drastic difference in those things. This idea of freedom, justice, equality, freedom of democracy, and all this other stuff. That stuff doesn't exist. Those things are just rhetoric. It's just like political rhetoric here. When Republicans are talking about freedom, they're not talking about freedom for you. They're talking about freedom for people with capital. There's a difference in those things. There's a difference in political rhetoric and reality. Those things, that's just rhetoric. The reality of it is the United States is into world influence. Military in all of those countries, having those military bases around the world, that's world influence. You can even make the case as world domination to some degree. We're not in the business of peace. That peace has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. Yeah, you go home. You stop selling them weapons. You stop getting involved in the conflicts. You focus your energies on your own home soil and deal with the issues that are in your own home soil. Yeah, you secure your borders and everything else, but ultimately, you deal with the issues at home and leave those other people to their own devices. We've done enough. We've done enough. All right, guys, I'll leave it at that. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon or PayPal. Thanks, guys.